first program. The views expressed are those of the guests and not necessarily those of the producer. Today's topic:
Atrocities in Iraq in Passion for Truth award-winning program.
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. The U.S. Marines killed unarmed civilians in Haditha, and they are investigating it along with other incidents of rape and murder. The incident of November 19, when 24 Iraqis died during a 5-hour encounter with the Marine Corps patrol, has raised two military investigations. One that the Marines may have deliberately murdered unarmed Iraqis, and another that they covered up that followed. Is it a strength of our democracy that even during war, our troops are probing their own atrocities against the enemy? We'll ask our panelist, Bob Bryce, one of the leading attorneys in the Washington metropolitan area, Fred Peterson from the Institute of Religion and Public Policy, Dr. Abul Hassan Nisari, a researcher on the historical perspectives of Indian events impacting on Muslims in India and abroad, Hali Jalani, political analyst, also a chair of the Asian Task Force of the United Nations Association National Capital Area. She has been visiting Iraq periodically since the war. And Dr. Dennis Warner from Pax Christi, the International Catholic Peace Movement. Dr. Warner has been involved in more than 50 countries for a variety of international, governmental, and private organizations. Welcome you all.
Thank you.
Dennis, is it a strength of our democracy that even during war, our troops are probing their own atrocities against the enemy?
You know, posing the question in that way makes it sound as though we deserve some special credit for investigating crimes and misconduct. Any true democracy would do this. So, sure, it's a strength of our democracy. It is democracy. If we don't do it, we are not a democratic country. So we have an absolute responsibility to do these investigations if allegations arise.
The alleged atrocities we're talking about were committed by a small group of service members. Agree?
Absolutely. My problem is that people shouldn't say that this is what Americans do across the board. One seems to forget that our armed forces are made up of a cross-section of our regular population. That is, we're going to be represented by the good, the bad, and the ugly. The fact that somebody has done this is not in dispute. I mean, whenever the allegations are proved right or wrong. What worries me more is the possibility of a cover-up. We have not given, and that has been my problem on the ground, we have not given the Iraqi population a recourse to go to anybody to basically allege crimes against them by Americans. This was done under Bremer. CPA Article number 17 was passed, which basically did not allow the Iraqi population any recourse against either Americans or any other member of the coalition who committed atrocities in Iraq, and that is my problem.
Well, what do you think? I mean, is it the events of November 19 exception, not the rule?
I personally believe there is not an exception, so I think it's happening more often. Only thing is that this thing has come to limelight just now. If the military was that kosher, they should have not covered up. They should have investigated right when it happened. As you know, there's a justice delayed, is justice denied. I think, but after 6 or 7 months, especially when you are doing this thing, it tells you you have been doing the whitewash. I think the people who committed the crime, now again, it doesn't matter who they are and what they are. We tout that we have the best military, we have the best ethics, we have the best rules. This thing should have been investigated right from the very beginning. And how do we know the military is going to be kosher in the investigations? I'll give the example of a Mr. Tillman, who was a football player, has all the world in front of him. He went to Afghanistan, he was killed by our own forces. And we told him he died with the enemy encountered. These kind of things must never be accepted. And our military should have courage to investigate these guys and hold the guys accountable. Accountability is very, very important, especially those. It is more disturbing than the guy who commits a crime than those who try to cover it up.
Fred, is it the cover-up that offends us the most? Are we offended because there was a cover-up?
First of all, I should say that it hasn't even been established that a crime was committed. So you can't have a cover-up unless you can establish that a crime was committed. Secondly, I should say that in a contrary opinion to some previously expressed, I have no problem at all in giving credit to the American system and to the system of democracies which do, in time of war, in very stressful war, actually quite publicly investigate, identify allegations, and air them quite publicly too. This is in contrast with those who behead their own, those who, as a matter of daily recourse, as we could have expressed in personal matter here on the panel, use terror as their weapon, and I know of no panel equivalent on the other side that is doing an investigation or objecting to the massacre of children, the bombings of civilians on a daily and routine basis. So I think we do deserve credit for doing what we're doing, number one. And number two, I think that if there were crimes committed, certainly they should be investigated. Certainly they should be prosecuted. They are. If there is a cover-up, quote unquote, after crimes have been established that have been committed, they also should be addressed properly.
Mr. Peterson, we are dropping the bombs on every day, on the daily basis. Lots of civilians are being killed. I mean, we invaded their country. You expect them to come up with the roses to us? I mean, if they are beheading our guys, we are responsible, not those guys. We should only go in there in the first place. How many people have the outcry here that this was an uncalled for war, we should not have gone there, and if we didn't go there, this should not have happened. The stress that we are facing is created by our own and not by the Iraqis.
Those who, may I respond to that?
Sure.
Those who identify the problem in Iraq as being Americans invading the country rather than the brutal dictatorship that routinely massacred hundreds, indeed millions of their own, somehow is to swat at a gnat and ignoring the elephant.
Mr. Peterson, you are ignoring the fact Saddam Hussein was built by the United States. The people who died, United States knew it and didn't do anything at that time. Now because we have invaded Iraq, we are trying to justify everything, that he was a bad guy, but he was built, he was bullied, I mean, he was made more than life-size by the United States, not by Saddam Hussein.
Let me go to Bob. Bob, should the Iraqi civilians feel guilty for those tactics, for planting the bombs, for doing the beheadings and everything?
Should the Iraqi civilian, you mean those who do it?
Yes.
Are you asking me if there's any justification to act like that?
No, what I'm saying is the Marines' atrocities are justified in view of the fact that they did the brutal killings, the Iraqis, that beheadings and all that. Does that justify them?
When you call it atrocities, when you talk about the handful of servicemen who commit, and when you call it atrocities, then you've answered your question. There's never any, there may be an explanation, but there's never any excuse, there's never any justification for that kind of act. But what we have to keep in mind is we've got a couple of 100,000 American servicemen and more than that that's circulated through these atrocities and horrible crimes have only been committed by a few handful, probably a much smaller percentage than the criminal rate in the United States. That doesn't justify what they've done, and there should certainly be an investigation whenever it's done and exposure. And just one last thing on the Tillman situation, I don't think that was a cover-up as much as his death was used for propaganda purposes at first until it became known that he was killed by friendly fire. And unfortunately that happens in war, it happens all too frequently.
I don't know what the experience of the panelists are, but in combat it is chaos, it is confusion, extremely violent confusion of the highest order. And that is when you're dealing with an organized enemy, when you're dealing with terrorists that not only routinely but as a matter of policy and course use civilians as defense shields, as targets, and attempt to create circumstances where there are civilian casualties so that